Hello, everybody. Dr. Lynetta Willis here, psychologist, family empowerment coach, and relationship evolutionary. I wanted to hop on this fine morning. It's kind of overcast here, but I like it. The wind is blowing, so you might hear my wind chimes kind of tingle over there, but it's a really, really pretty day overall. So I wanted to hop on before I get started working for the day and just share some thoughts on something that has come up with a few of my clients lately. So the relationship that I'm going to focus on with you all today is the one with our children. I'm curious, how old are your kids? How old are your kids? And if you don't have children yourself, how old are the kids that are nearest to you? Maybe you have nieces, nephews, things like that. Just pop that down in the chat. Yeah, I have two kiddos. Their ages are 6 and 10, girl, boy, in that order. And I have, my sister says she's my third child. Really, I guess my first. She is 21, and she was born when I was 20. So when people are like, oh, well, you don't have any teenagers yet, I'm like, up. I've been there. I've been there. Oh my gosh. Woo! A lot of phone calls during those years. Oh yeah. I get it. Trust me. So I wanted to come on and I wanted to talk about manipulative children. Okay, so let me know. Wow, those wind chimes are really banging. Let me know if you've ever had this thought before, like, oh, my kids are so manipulative. Oh, they're so manipulative. At whatever age. And I'll be honest, that thought's come up in my mind as well. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a tweak today that will maybe help you see that from a slightly shifted perspective. So if you watched my origin story video that I did a couple weeks ago, where I talked about sort of how I got here, I talked about the 4 horsemen mindset. Right? And that's the mindset of 4 commonly held beliefs or tools that families often use to control one another, usually children. And those are pain, blame, shame, and avoidance, right? And these horsemen, they are stealth, man. They gallop from one generation to the next until someone in one generation stops and says, you know what? Thanks, guys, but I think it's time for you to retire. You're not necessary anymore. And they send them off to a beach where they can have those coconut drinks or something like that, right? And part of my purpose is to really lead or help to lead that charge where we retire those 4 horsemen of pain, blame, shame, and avoidance that gallop through. Sorry, phone call just came in. I put it on Do Not Disturb, but I guess it didn't work. Yes, so today I'm going to talk about horseman blame. So when we blame someone, especially our kids, we say things like, oh, God, they're so manipulative. Or we might look at them and say, oh, you make me so angry. Right? Trust me, I have been there. Have you thought about those? Have you thought those or said those with regards to your kids? Let me know. The first thing I want to ask, let me back up for a second. I'm curious, how many of you can identify those 4 horsemen as being in your household when you were growing up? Pain, blame, shame, and avoidance. One, if not all 4 of those were used to kind of keep you in line. Yeah, comment on that for me. Yes, thumbs up, definitely. Yeah, they weren't as effective, I think, and I think that's I got really good at hiding stuff, right? Like, let me know if they taught you all anything in terms of really helping you to become who you are today, or how they've impacted you in becoming who you are today. I'm just curious. But okay, so we'll say things like, they're so manipulative, or you make me so angry. And first I'll start with the you make me so angry. So everyone in this household, from the youngest to the oldest, is responsible for their own feelings. So if anybody, very rarely do we say you make me anymore, because I get so obsessive about that. I say everybody's responsible for their own feelings. So no one can make you feel a certain way. And I'll prove it to you. So in order for someone to make you feel a certain way, it suggests that there are certain reactions that are universal. Right? So for instance, it's a struggle, but I try really hard not repeating. I know, we all do. I'm with you, Christina. Like, I do this stuff, right? And I still struggle sometimes to be like, oh, one of the horsemen is still rearing their head up. So I totally get that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. So everyone in the household is responsible for their own feelings, and because no response is universal. So an example of a universal response is, if you go out into outside and it's a bright sunny day, okay? What happens to your pupils? They constrict, right? So you can technically say, the sun made my pupils constrict, because regardless, that your body, it just automatically happens. It's a universal response, unless you go to the eye doctor and they drop those dilation drops in your eyes, and then your pupils won't dilate, but then you have to wear those glasses, right? So when we talk about something making us do something, that really only applies to threat of life, threat of death, and even then you still technically have a choice, right? But I'll put that in there because it's a really tough choice. So threat of death, or if you literally can't not do it. Wait, that was a horrible double negative. You literally have to do it, right? I actually deleted by accident, but yes, the struggle not to repeat in the cycle is hard. Yes. So making sure that, so those are the types of things that you can say, oh, this thing made me do this. An example of something that is not universal, it would be like a death. Okay, so if a certain action automatically led to a certain response in terms of an emotional response, then we could say, yes, you made me feel a certain way. But take death, for instance. All right, you can have somebody's mother or father pass away, and normally we think that the universal reaction would be sadness, but that's not always the case, right? You can have a set of twins, and one is draped over mommy or daddy's grave, crying their eyes out, and the other one is dancing on mommy and daddy's grave, happy as a lark that they're finally dead, right? So even there's no universal reaction to most situations, right? So nobody makes you feel a certain way, right? It's based on your experiences, the choices you make, and that sort of thing. So that's why I say in our house, we don't say you make me feel a certain way. We say, I had a reaction to what you said, or, we choose our behaviors in response to our actions. So really it's a big piece about taking responsibility. So that's the first thing. Now, they're so manipulative piece. All right, let me read out the definition of manipulative. So manipulation means to control or play upon by artful, unfair, or insidious means, especially to one's own advantage. To control or play upon by artful, unfair, or insidious means, especially to one's own advantage. Wow, that sounds dark. I think about stuff like that. I think about like Hannibal Lecter, sociopaths, Not saying that people who are less sociopathic can't manipulate, of course. But when we think about kids, they're really not doing this as much as we think they are. And what I like to say, instead of, and I'm going to get to teenagers in a second, so hold your horses, because I know you're like, wait, I'm going to get to that in a minute. So what I like to say is, instead of saying they're manipulating me, one thing I like to say is they're using a strategy or a tool to get their needs met. Right? So if you think about it, just sit with that for a second. So think about the last manipulative thing that your child did, or the last time your child made you angry or made you sad, right? And just think about what happens in your body when you say, "Oh, they were trying so hard to manipulate me." Think about what happens in your body. Think about how you feel towards them when you feel that sense. I mean, for me, yeah, I get angry. I feel a little bit of maybe embarrassment, which makes me want to get them under control. Like, you will not treat me this way. You will not talk to me this way, right? So it makes them like arm's length me versus them. Yeah. So I'm curious what comes up for you when you think about it from that perspective. Them manipulating you. Now think about it as in terms of they're using a strategy to get their needs met. Or they're using a tool to get their needs met. That same situation, you just shift the language. Language is so powerful. You just shift the language. They're using a strategy or tool to get their needs met. When I think about it from that way, interestingly enough, so what happened, and I'm seriously doing this in the fly, in the moment. What happened was, because I'm thinking about my son, a situation that happened with him, and when I thought about the strategy or tool, the first thing I noticed in my mind's eye was that he was sad, right? Like, he wasn't enjoying the situation either, right? And when people manipulate you, they're kind of enjoying it, right? Like, they're not upset. They're like, you know, like, it's artful, right? What's the definition? It's artful. Play and artful are literally in the definition. So they're kind of having fun. But the first thing I noticed in that moment was he wasn't having fun, you know? When I think about it as a strategy or tool, I kind of want to lean in a little bit. And that's why there's a little, rhyme that I use where it says, manipulation you push away, strategy you'll stay and play. Right? Manipulation you push away, strategy you stay and play. So when you think about it as manipulation, as a parent, you push away. You're like, this is me versus you, buddy, and I promise I'm going to win, right? Whereas strategy, you're more likely to stay and play. Because you think about strategy like strategy games, right? You kind of lean in like, all right, let's try to figure this out. So what my intention today is to help you get to a point as a parent where you're more likely to stay and play. And the thing that you can do is ask 3 questions. Now, if you watched a lot of my videos, you'll realize that I do a lot of questions that you can ask yourself. And there's a reason for that. Because a lot of times when we're in these frustrating moments with our kids, our frontal lobes shut down. And we go into that reptilian flight or flight brain, right? And in that brain, we don't make conscious decisions, we react a lot of times, right? And usually we're reacting to something that happened 10, 20 years ago, but we don't realize it, right? Our child is no longer our child, or our partner is no longer our partner anymore. Now you are the enemy and I will defeat you or run from you, one of the two, you know? So when that happens, when we get to that point where we're no longer talking to our loved one, but we're talking to some figment that we created or that we're remembering from our past, it's really hard to get back to the present moment and to connect. But when we ask a question, it is impossible to attempt to answer a question without activating our frontal lobe, right? So whenever you attempt to answer a question, your frontal lobe is always activated. When I was in private practice and I did a lot of trauma work, I would work with people who sometimes they dissociate, and which means that they would sort of leave the moment, right? And one thing that I would ask towards the end of the session to bring them back is I would say something like, what time is it? Right? Or where are your keys? I don't see them. Are you sure you have them? Right? And so those questions, it automatically brings you back because I'm asking, even if they never watch on, what time is it? Right? Because it's like, oh, right, you have to go up here. You have to engage this to some degree. So that's why I'm always offering questions to ask yourself. So the 3 questions that you can ask, and you can ask one or all 3, because in that moment you may not be able to think of, oh God, what were the 3 questions? I offer as many as possible. Pick one. Pick one to have in your arsenal. So when your child is in that space and you feel like they're being manipulative, one of the questions you can ask is, what is the need? What is their need? Remember, instead of manipulation, you push away. Strategy, you stay and play, right? So you ask, what is the need? Are they trying to get power? Do they need, kids need power too. And sometimes it's really easy to pull that away, especially when something is their fault, when we're blaming, right? It's really easy to push away. Do they need attention? Maybe they just need attention and I have a really funny story about that, about my daughter, that I'll tell another time, but they will do really interesting things that don't look like they really want you close to them. You're like, you were doing everything to push me away right now. I really don't see attention here, but okay. Are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they overwhelmed, right? Like, what is the need that they're trying to get met in this moment through this behavior? Another question, and wait, because I'm going to ask it, and it's going to sound one way, but hold on. So, how have I taught you or allowed you to use this tool with me? Okay, now, the first reaction might be, well, dang, now you're blaming me. But it's not blame. It's not a blame thing. It's a curiosity thing. Really, it's not like, how have you taught them to treat you that way? It's, how have I taught you that this is okay? Right? And it's just a way to get back into your head and start asking, like, in what ways do I contribute to this dynamic that's between us, right? So how have I taught you or allowed you to use this tool? And usually it comes up in one of 2 ways. Either we model it for them, or we don't really, what I call power share, in a way that gives them an alternate way to get that need met. Right? So, growing up, for a lot of us, our voices were not something that was like that could be heard. It's sort of like children should be seen and not heard. If you had an alternate opinion, it was considered back talking and rude and disrespectful. So a lot of us were trained that our voices need to go down, right? So it's not that was modeled for us, because our caregivers often had a lot to say, right? But what happens is we have no alternate way to get our voice met. So we find other ways to get maybe we're passive aggressive, or maybe we go out and we hang out with people that we know we shouldn't hang out with because they listen to us and they're blah, 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 and I'll show you, right? So what way have I taught you or allowed you to use this tool in this relationship? And that's something you could just sit back and ask at some point. And I say that because, I don't know if you've ever had this situation. I've had this situation with my kids where you'll go to like their school and then their teacher's like, they are such a dream. And you're like, okay, by dream, do you mean like Nightmare on Elm Street sort of dream? Or what kind of dream are you meaning exactly? And because they're very different when they're with other people than they are with you, right? So it's not that they don't have the capacity to be different. They absolutely do. But there's something going on in the relationship with you where that tool or that strategy is a go-to. So when we ask, how have I taught you or allowed you? It goes back to Maya Angelou, you teach people how to treat you. Same thing applies to kids. We teach them how to treat us. So when we ask that question, how have I taught you or allowed you to use this tool in this relationship? Again, it's not blaming, it's getting curious. And then the last question is, what do I want to teach you instead? What do I want to teach you instead? And depending on how old your child is, that can involve a conversation or a series of conversations. It can involve just shifting how you are with them, especially if they're very young, right? So you showing up differently and setting firm but very kind boundaries with them and letting them know, like, this is going to shift because I'm aware that I've allowed this. I've taught you that this is okay, and it really isn't, and it's hurting our relationship. You know, and having that discussion, again, if they're old, and you can even have that discussion if they're young. They may not get it completely, but it's helpful to let them know, I'm shifting. Now, teenagers. I know that from helping to raise a teen that sometimes, love your perspective, I've got to go, but watch later. Okay, thank you, Christine, for staying on. Thank you, Christine, I appreciate you. Come back and watch. I know that from helping to raise a teen, they are smart. And sometimes it does feel like they're being a little manipulative. Now, I will still hold firm to this idea that I do not believe that they are enjoying it. I don't think it's playful or artful when they do it, right? But it can feel that way sometimes. Same questions still apply. What is their need? What is their need? How have I taught them or allowed them to use this tool? And what do I want to teach them instead? I mean, if your child is truly a manipulative mastermind, do two things for me. One, call Mensa because they're probably brilliant. And two, please shift things because we don't need any more manipulative masterminds unleashed into the world, okay? But if the questions are still the same, right? It's not helpful or skillful or effective to label them as manipulative because it doesn't help your relationship, right? So asking those three questions are still going to be helpful. Okay, so the last thing I want to say, I had this realization a couple of years ago where I said, you know what? If my child is able to manipulate me, that says way more about me than it does about my child. Like, here I am, a grown woman, being manipulated by a child. Really? What's happening is I'm being triggered, and when I'm triggered, I'm not in my frontal lobe, and I feel out of control. And we feel out of control, we look for something to control, right? Or something to put the blame on. And, oh, you're making me feel this way. And it's not, like I said, sometimes it's not our kids. Sometimes it's our partner or our parent or whomever. But I guarantee you it's so much more powerful when we're able to take that in and say, what can I control within me? How can I shift so that I can have more control in the situation? Excuse me. That won't require me to overpower or blame or shame or avoid, four horsemen, the people that I love. Right? So doing it this way actually allows us to reclaim our power. All right, so to recap, remember, manipulation you push away, strategy you stay and play. So when you feel like you're wanting to push away from your child, ask yourself, am I blaming right now? Am I entering into a blame cycle right now? And can I ask, can I look at this more of they're using a strategy and see how that shifts, what shifts in your body when you do that, okay? So you might be watching this and you might be thinking, man, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm a special snowflake. Or my kid's a special snowflake. All right? They're all manipulative. Or maybe you ask those questions and you drew a blank. You're like, I don't really know what they need, or I don't know how maybe I've taught or allowed this, or I don't know what I need to teach them. That's fine. Go to my website. Let's hop on a call. It's free. Love it. Manipulation you push away. Yes, you are welcome. Yes. Hop on my website, Dr. L. Willis, Dr. L as in Ladybug, WILLIS.com. Let's hop on a call. Totally free. And let's strategize. I promise I won't manipulate you. Let's strategize. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for hopping on. Thank you for commenting. Thank you, Christy. Yes, use that. And yeah, pop any questions if you have any questions or comments for me down below. All right. Thank you all. Bye.